Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Hilary Roberts, alongside my co-host, Jason Waller. Hey, Jay.
Hi, Hilary. How are you?
Man, I am happy. Today is the Irish party day, and it's a day I don't party.
That is the truth. God, there's many days, St. Patrick's Day, many days that I definitely blacked out and don't remember, but grateful that is not the case today, and I'm grateful that we are here. But I want to catch us up. How did your trip go? You've been to weddings, you've been to Mexico, you've been cruising around. What's the latest with you? I haven't seen you on here. Last couple of times I've been on here with Alex.
Well, as you know, I got sick with COVID,
Yes.
and then I had my friend's wedding, and then came to Newport and celebrated my birthday. And anyway, everything's okay. You know, I went through some really dark times right after I found out about the infertility stuff, and really thought that was going to be different. And I just had to dig deep and really reach out to my support system.
Do you mind sharing about that at all, or is it too fresh?
No, I can share about it. I froze eggs right before my heart surgery 11 years ago. And I did 3 rounds, and I had 29 eggs. And through the process, 10 thawed, 5 fertilized, 3 went to 6-day blastocyst. They tested those 3 and they were all abnormal. And so I was just absolutely devastated because I can't, unless it's a God's miracle, at this point, I can't produce the eggs anymore. So Greg took a half a day off and was really there with me. And I didn't realize how hard it would hit me, but for 2 days I was a wreck. And the best I could do was I talked to my therapist the next day. Of course, I talked to my mentor. And then I had to speak at a thing about a connection with God, and that I did the St. Francis Prayer of Assisi dissection, and that was good. But you know, I really and then I did extra stuff. You know, I just really upped my support groups, and then I even went to I hadn't been to the church. I used to sing at Bishop T.D. Jakes' church, and I went there with my mom, and he did a 3-hour service, and he said everything that was just attacking my mind in the middle of the night. And I just, I was able to cry a ton. I've been crying anyway, but you know, again, if I am not running the show, it's just about that surrender and, you know, a grief process, you know, because I had a dream, and like Polly said to me, she said, honey, you didn't see them as eggs, you saw them as children. And I did. And I know there are other avenues and starting to kind of look down that way. But, you know, this experience being on this planet, Jay, can be at times very intense. And I can't imagine not having a program, not having a spiritual advisor, not having a support system, not reaching out to people. I just keep telling the truth on myself. And that's why I have 24 years, because of no matter how poorly I've behaved, no matter how much that I've always told on myself, I don't keep any secrets. And I honestly believe that's it. And you know what? I'm going to be fully and authentically myself, because I don't want to lose that.
Well, it shows the growth that you've made, and again, is obviously, I mean, you've talked many times about it, and you know, my heart goes out to you. And it's a very tragic time, and it was, you know, something that you've had to walk through. But by you having your program in place, it's allotted you the opportunity, you know, to be able to be vulnerable and talk about it, because there's a lot of people that go through that, and your story can resonate with so many more people. But it's just really amazing to see when you take your action, like you said, to showing up at the church, and how God shows up, you know, and when you actually do the work and put one foot in front of the other, a lot of this stuff becomes revealed, because left to our own devices, we know where that can take us. But you're doing, through this 24 years that you've acquired, it's because you've been taking these initial steps with whatever's thrown at you. Life is never, you know, just because we're sober doesn't mean life's easy. And again, that's very, very apparent. You went through something very tragic, and imagine not being in the state of mind, you know, sober and trying to go through that. That would have been a nightmare. So, but I really appreciate you sharing that. And again, it's amazing. And again, that's why I love that we have this podcast, so people can come, connect, relate. You know, it's a safe and trusted environment. And, you guys for the foundation, I wanted to give a quick update before we had our guests coming on. We got our golf tournament coming up again, which is always fun. Last year we had people, Red Bull, we partnered with Red Bull, people jumping out of planes and a lot of people in recovery having a phenomenal time, embracing natural highs. And it was a great time. So we're doing that again. Also, we're building out a couple new programs, which are going to be really educational, working with schools and creating curriculum and courses for them, not only the kids, but the families. And we're looking at building out a family program right now that's going to be specific, that will have an actual branch and an arm that will be here as a support for family members. And actually having licensed and accredited therapists and counselors be able to help with that. So we'll keep you guys up to speed. There's a lot of cool things that are in the process. A lot of things that we're doing, a lot of really cool partnerships that we're in the process of building and developing here, especially in Orange County, at a local level. It's cool. So we'll keep you guys up to speed with that. But without further ado, I want to bring on the man, the myth, the legend. We got my boy over here. I'll give you a real formal introduction, even though I want to give you my own introduction because I know Casey on a deeper level. He was my roommate when we went out and went hunting. But
quite recently.
Yeah, quite recently. But this week, we are excited to be joined by Casey Gooding. He's a committee member for NAATP, NAADAC, and CASA, as well as National Business Development Representative for Burning Tree Programs, which is a phenomenal program. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're here, brother. How you doing, man?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with both you and Hill, and I just love the work that Red Songbird Foundation's doing locally and nationally, and happy to participate in the forum.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to jump right into this with you, bro.
Let's do it.
We like to ask a very difficult question, and I'm dying to know this about you. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I think if you had asked me when I was younger, I wanted to be a baseball player. That was my passion when I was young, and played baseball for a number of years. Those dreams kind of went kaputs in high school. As, of course, other things came along that were the calling to the career I have today. The experience that I had.
Talk about
right?
that.
So drugs and alcohol started becoming a more exhilarating part of my life at that point in time. And school and baseball and other activities kind of took a secondary role in my life. And so, from the time I was young all the way until my mid-30s, it created some significant issues in my life. And, that kind of propelled me to the position I'm in today.
What initiated, you to, like, when you were, because it's baseball, that's a very familiar story with me. What was what were kind of some of these sidetracking moments that started to steer you away from your passion and the thing that you loved? What got you to start drinking? And was there a particular first moment? And how did that progress?
Yeah, I think, the opposite of recovery is, isolation, right? And part of the recovery aspect is this community aspect. And, so I grew up in an area and, had a lot of friends and participated in sports with a lot of the same people. And at a certain point in my life, we moved and went to a new area. And, I wasn't part of that socioeconomic culture at that point in time. And so that was challenging for me as a young guy, and started seeking outside opportunities to fill that void that was happening in my life. And, there came a time where, people were utilizing these substances and drinking, and it became exciting and they were accepting. And so, I was kind of diverted from my passion into a more accepting atmosphere as a young boy. Or teenager.
Wow. So, I mean, what I hear you saying, though, is like a real, after you're moving and stuff like that, there was really a loss of connection, right? A sense of worth or sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
And again, that takes us, into a place of trying to fulfill or to escape that feeling, right? And at that age, there's only so many tools or resources allotted for us at that time. Looking back at that, like, can you see or identify like areas that you could pinpoint or would say to your younger self?
Certainly, I think, it'd be kind of a different process if you could look back through the time and look at myself as a young man in that capacity and say, hey, this is really what you need to be focused on. And your ideals of what you need as an individual are definitely different than what you're thinking right now. I think, as I've grown into adulthood and as a man in recovery, the really important things for me are, my connection with a power greater than myself and my connection with my fellows and people. And, I was developing this selfish, self-centered, egotistical, righteous, character at that point in time. And so really it would be a lot of contrary action. I would be influencing myself at a younger age to accept and implement in my life and hopefully propel me on a different path.
When did you start noticing you had a problem? Can you take us up to what drove you off course and then when you started awakening from that?
Yeah. So there was a problem with me right away. In middle school, I started having behavioral problems, getting in fights, those kind of things like that. Smoking cigarettes when I'm not supposed to. In high school, the marijuana and other illicit drugs started taking place. Certainly alcohol on the weekends, and then that came with skipping class and being held back in high school because I didn't have enough credits. And by the age of 18, I'm, in an adolescent, at the age of 17, I'm in an adolescent recovery center in Michigan at that point in time. And my parents had no idea exactly what to do. And so they had received a recommendation of a program that I could go to, but I wasn't convinced that, that I qualified for this program or I had the same issues that other people had at that point in my life. So inevitably, at that point in my life, I didn't accept any of the support or help that was provided to me. And so it was a really rocky road for years and, throughout a decade of having some success in life as a young person and, getting married and having kids and doing all those things and holding a life together as a functioning alcoholic and drug addict. And all the way till, the last demise of truly understanding that I did have this thing and being hopeless that I could change anything about that.
Can we talk about a functioning alcoholic real quick?
Certainly.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot of people out there, and something that I'm seeing more and more and more is around a functional alcoholic, right? Because people will associate that, don't get in trouble with the law. I'm not getting DUIs. They have whatever reason it may be, which in a form could be denial around what's really going on, right? And can you talk about what it was like for you being a functional alcoholic, and maybe give us your opinion and or thoughts or advice for people that may be struggling, or questioning if they're a functional alcoholic?
Yeah. So I think when we take a look at, what would be described as a functioning alcoholic, you would think of somebody that's able to maintain their relationships, being, with their employer, going to work on a daily basis, showing up when they are absolutely required to in fatherhood or motherhood, maintaining their finances, paying their bills, all those kind of things, but certainly having an understanding that, I'm somewhat dependent on alcohol. And I always beg the question, when I honestly want to, I find that I cannot quit entirely.
Right.
Or if I have any issue with stopping once I start, then I'm probably an alcoholic. So if I meet that criteria, but I'm still able to do all these other things, alcoholism is significant in my life. What we know from alcoholism, though, is it's a progressive and fatal disease. So as I may be a functioning alcoholic for a certain point in my life, inevitably that disease is going to progress and there will be consequences as a result of that, but that would be affected in my relationships with my children, with my family, with my employer, and they start piling up. Additionally, I believe that my quality of life, even as a functioning alcoholic, is not as significant as what it could be in recovery because I don't place value on my personal relationships. I'm still selfish. I'm self-centered. I'm egotistical. I'm not of service to anybody else. That includes my family, my friends, my employer. And, I don't have this deep and effective spiritual relationship that omits through me in my relationships.
It's kind of
so good,
freaking so well put. And to tie that up though, so what was it like? Is that something that can you relate that to yourself similarly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even in those times when I thought I had things together pretty much, I wasn't living up to my potential. Potential is always something that we talk about in recovery, pre-recovery, having an opportunity now in recovery to live up to potential or recognize potential in a different way. And, I would say that during those times, I wasn't living the life of integrity that I desire now, or excellence.
God, man, see, I always bypass that, bro. I never was a functioning alcoholic. It was either I was, sober, or I was just 3 sheets to the wind. I never had that middle ground. I went 0 to 90 instantly. But no, I think you gave a really good overview of that. And again, is something that I also like people to ask, is if they're in that state of mind, is like, hey, is whatever it is, blank, alcohol, drugs, work, gambling, whatever it may be, is that adding or subtracting from this beautiful life you have to live? And because really what you're saying is, what I hear you saying when you're saying that from a functional alcoholic, is they're just coasting through life. There's no real true intimacy and or connection. So
what I think of often is pre a life in recovery, what was my purpose?
Yeah.
My purpose was a pretty self-determined objective.
Right.
It was get mine, do what I have to take mine, and so on and so forth. And, my purpose is clearly defined for me now, right? My purpose is to stay sober and help other people through this process.
I love it.
And that's something that I didn't attain prior to being a person in recovery. I never had that.
And so what like to Hilary's point, right? Like, so as you're going through these motions, and again, appreciate that feedback. Very good. What was that turning point for you? Where was it just like, dude, enough is enough? What was that like moment of clarity that really came through? And, because from the sounds of it, it seems like you struggled from a young age. It obviously didn't stop after adolescent recovery or treatment. So kind of walk us through those motions though. And then what was that turning point?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly, pinpoint the day, the time of day, where it happened, and everything, the turning point for me. So, my sobriety date is 11/29/2012. So that point in time happened for me on 11/28/2012 at about 2:00 in the afternoon on a patio in San Juan Capistrano, California. So my story of recovery really starts with my family. My family was in a position, again, that they were going to go to any length to support me in recovery. They were also in a position that they would no longer do anything that would not support my recovery, which included paying my bills, paying my insurance, paying my car notes, anything that had to do with financial support. And so they had provided an opportunity. They said, if you're willing to change your life, you come out here to California, we've identified a treatment program for you to go to, but we're asking you to commit 1 year of your life to this because that's what experts say is going to help you.
Wow.
And of course, they had no clue of the treatment program. They had no clue what the experts said, but they had a divine intervention, and they convinced me to accept this opportunity. And I'm sitting there saying, well, do I accept this or not? And I said, my life is not going to improve any better being an alcoholic drug addict the way I am. I'm either going to end up dead, institutionalized, or in jail. Right. And that's certainly not the life that I want to live. And so I accepted the opportunity, and I came out. And, they picked me up from the airport and they took me to that treatment program. And on 11/28/2012, that afternoon, I remember sitting in front of that treatment program and I remember my dad crying in front of me. And I remember him saying, I just want you to have a life of integrity. I want you to live a life without the need of these substances. I want to have the son back that I know and love. And it was right in that moment that I knew that the lies that I continued to tell myself, that this addiction, this drug abuse, this alcoholism was only hurting myself and not other people around me, was a complete lie. I could no longer deny the fact that my actions and behavior had significant consequences to those who loved me. And I had to make a change right in that moment. And so I went into that treatment program and, I did the work. I wrote the letters. I listened to the groups. When they asked me to do things, I did them. I went to the meetings. I followed the aftercare recommendations. And most importantly, through that whole process, my family was one step ahead of me. They were doing these same things. They were taking direction. They were changing the way they engaged with me. They were supporting me with love through their actions. And without all those things working in cohesion, I'm absolutely convinced I don't sit here today. So it was long before I decided to make a decision to change that my family had made that decision for me.
Wow, that's incredible. So I have something to ask you on that. So it sounds like you had kids young.
Yes, I had kids when I was 24 years old. My kids are 19 and 17 right now.
Wow.
So how long did you drink through their childhoods? And tell us a little bit about that, about being a dad.
Yeah, they were 8 and 10 by the time I got sober. My kids were 6 and 8 when I got divorced from their mother, which is a really, really challenging time for all of us that were involved, because
Was that prior to treatment?
it was prior to treatment. It was a really, really challenging time for us. It was difficult. My kids were young. They loved their dad. They didn't understand this. It took many years.
Was it because of your alcoholism?
Yeah, my divorce was absolutely as a result of my alcoholism. Yes.
Okay.
And so there was some support that she provided and some boundaries that she had created, and there were some consequences for breaking her boundaries. And I'm absolutely aware of that today and know that she made the right decision. She stood in a position where she had to protect herself and our children from this disease. And it was a brutal reality for all of us.
How's your relationship today with your kids and your ex-wife?
Phenomenal, right? So it didn't come without a lot of work on everybody's behalf, and a lot of amends and forgiveness and action and continued living amends, right? And so throughout that process, I've had, very honest conversations and transparent conversations with my children, and super supportive. Happy to report son's in his first year of college, and I support him with that. And my daughter's in her junior year of high school and looking at schools, and she'll be traveling here to California over the summer, and we'll be visiting campuses that she's considering enrolling in, and I'll be supporting that. And so as a result of recovery, really anything can happen.
Now, do you share, and that's phenomenal. Have you broached the conversation with your kids about addiction?
Yes, absolutely.
And what did that look like for you?
It was kind of a tightrope to walk, right? But they're old enough at this point in time that they understand and see the effects of alcoholism and addiction. So I thought that honesty was the best policy. So there were times leading up to the most recent time I spoke with them that we skirted around the fact. But more recently, they had additional questions that they needed transparency on. And I thought the best way to go about that was to be absolutely honest. I wanted to implement aspects of accepting responsibility for my action and behavior, and specifically not placing any blame on their mother for decisions that she had to make that protected them.
But you didn't go out and initiate that necessarily. Over the course of time, through communication, they just got more interested and more intrigued.
Initially, I did. There was part of an amends process that I did and went back to them and spoke with them. But I was probably not as thorough and transparent as they, in their elder ages, may have required at that point in time. So as they grew up, they had additional questions about what that looked like. And now they absolutely know, and they know what I do. And for all intents and purposes, I think they're very proud of me for what I get to do in my life as a result of being in recovery.
You're a great guy, man.
Oh, it's so precious.
Yeah, you're a great guy. Do you think you would have, looking back at with the dynamics of the family and stuff, do you think you would have made a change without your family intervening?
No, I absolutely would not have. Yeah, that was very evident and transparent. I was going to essentially die living the way that I lived.
So you were on that path. I mean, I break this down on here, and sometimes it's in stages. You're at that stage 4 of.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting, Jay, because so anybody listening, if you're enabling them to keep drinking or drugging, that you're loving them to death.
Literally.
It's about having them become responsible and to not continue to do the same things, expecting them to be different. So
you bring up so much valuable information through all of this, and I think there's not one person that listens to the show that can't pull something from this, from the family dynamic to your personal upbringing, your own trials and tribulations as a kid, to, the divorce, to, making amends down the road. There's so much here, and you have such a powerful story, and it's really relatable and connective. So it's just really inspiring. Well, moving on to the good stuff, right? I mean, like that's
that is the good stuff. That's a great stuff.
That's the beginning of the good stuff, bro. Like I want to know.
We want more good stuff.
we want more. We want to know, what it is that Casey does. After you had this, I mean, it was so cool, that moment of clarity. It's almost like that light turned on, the day, the time. That's how it is for me. I remember that exact moment when that really transpired. But what do you do, Casey, to maintain and sustain this life that you've been able to achieve?
Yeah. So, through that process of treatment and recovery and meetings and fellowship and service, I really dedicated my life to the program. Right. And, I hang out with people that are in sobriety. Now I get the privilege of supporting other people through the process of recovery. Right. And, I've found myself in a profession that, based on my experience, strength, and hope, I'm able to provide message to families and individuals seeking this way of life that's been very, very rewarding for me.
I love that, man.
That's
I love
so cool.
So, Casey, with all the work that you're doing, tell us a little bit more about NAATP, NAADAC, CASA, Burning Tree. I want to hear more about what you're doing now to impact lives.
Yeah, so I'm a national business development representative with Burning Tree Programs, and we have 3 programs. We've been around since 1999, supporting the chronic relapser and their families. And so our program's located in Kaufman, Texas, and that's kind of our flagship program. And not everybody meets criteria as being a chronic relapser. So we created a couple different programs, one in Elgin, Texas, that's in network with all major insurance companies so that families have access to high quality care. Mm-hmm. And then we wanted to establish a young adults recovery academy. And so we have a program in Tucson, Arizona that supports that demographic. So that's who I'm employed by. And I spend a lot of time, going to appointments, meeting with other professionals, talking about our programs and how we can support families and individuals in need of care. As a result of working in the field of behavioral health care over the last 7 years, I've been honored with the privilege of supporting NAATP as a membership committee member, supporting their conferences. They asked me about 2 years ago to be the lead state ASA or advocate in the state of California for their organization. Wow. At which point I reached out to a group of my colleagues and peers, and we created a advocacy campaign called the California Alliance for State Advocacy, where I sit as the president of that organization. And that's a grassroots behavioral health care advocacy campaign. And so we establish relationships with other nonprofit associations, and we've had the privilege of having Red Songbird Foundation's Hilary speak at one of our events, and we were really grateful for that. Amongst other nonprofit associations, and then establishing rapport with our legislators. So we do a lot of Q&As with our state senators and find out what we can do to support our communities in receiving behavioral health care services, amongst other things that are affecting our communities as a result of the disease of addiction and mental health and substance abuse.
Dude, huge.
That's so amazing. Huge. And I know because I see you on social media. You're here, there, everywhere. You're all over the country all the time.
You just see this guy with his suitcase and his golf clubs.
Yeah,
exactly.
Those 2 things go with me wherever I go.
Yes.
So there's a question that we ask of our participants, and so if you were to give our listeners one action for the day that they could do today, what would it be?
Practice love for self.
Ooh.
With a deep breath. That was powerful.
That was great.
That was next level.
That was great.
Wow.
And
that's pretty good.
I think we all focus a lot on what we can give, but we don't focus a lot on what we need or what, so that's probably what I would ask.
That.
Yeah,
everybody's so
really
hard
good.
on themselves.
Yes.
Everybody's so hard on themselves. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. I just think you're an awesome guy. And for all of our listeners, this guy, he talks an amazing solution, but even more than that, he walks the solution. Yeah. And he's just active, busy, helping others and doing the deal. And it's just amazing to watch. And I haven't known him as long as Jason, but I'm grateful that I do know you, and you're affiliated with people I've known for a long time, like Steve L. and all that. I got to get him on this deal too. So,
Casey, it's really appreciate you coming on and sharing all that. You are the real deal. You are a true man of integrity, and you're an inspiration, and you motivate a lot of people, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. And if people want to find out more about yourself or the programs, where can they find you?
So you can look us up at www.burningtree.com. You'll see links to all 3 of our different programs. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to look for me individually, Casey Gooding on either platform, Callie Sparty on Instagram.
Yeah, baby.
Look me up on LinkedIn if you'd like. Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been a real pleasure to be here and always good to see you.
Congrats.
You too. And it's Casey, like K.
It's like the Kansas City Chiefs, baby.
There you go.
All right, Hill. Have a wonderful day.
You too, everybody.